Hello, friends. I am so grateful to be joined today by my co host, Dr. Carlos Garcia, a clinical psychologist, executive coach, and performance healer who brings a powerful depth of experience in guiding people through healing and transformation. And together, we are truly honored to welcome our guest, Jas Bamra. She's a rapid transformational therapy practitioner, grief educator, and grief movement guide who has walked through deep personal losses herself and now helps others navigate grief, release emotional blocks, and reconnect with their own inner strength. Jas brings such compassion and wisdom to this work, and we can't wait for you to hear from her. Together, we will be exploring grief, healing, and what it truly means to grow through life's hardest seasons. You'll find her bio and all the ways to connect with her in the episode description. Thank you, Jas, so much for being here. Jas Bamra, you've shared that you are a rapid transformational therapy practitioner.
Mhm.
Would you like to share a little bit more about that? Because to be honest, this is the first time I'm hearing that after I met you. I
Yeah,
started looking into it a little bit more. So please
no,
do share.
absolutely. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So, rapid transformational therapy is short RTT, is essentially the bridge between your conscious and subconscious mind that allows us to use this. It's a modality of therapy that has been created by a lady called Marissa Peer. She's been doing this for 35 plus years now, very well known in the industry. But essentially, it is bridging that space between the conscious and the subconscious to really look at what's going on underneath us, underneath what's showing up in our life, underneath what's showing up with issues. And it's a really quick way of addressing not only what kind of issues someone is going through, but where they come from, why they came up in the first place, what happened to have these issues come up. And it's a beautiful way and a quick, rapid way to really get to this root, interrupt the patterns that we find, and then, I guess, install new patterns. So it is what it says on the name, rapid, because it is quite quick. Um, Nothing is magic, though, at the end of the day. We still need to do the work. But it is a really good way of looking at underneath the surface. And I think I love this because it empowers you, because all the answers we say are within us anyway. And it's just allowing us to connect the dots of things that often we are not able to consciously connect. So RTT is a really powerful modality that allows us to do that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm curious, as someone who works often with clients, sort of what did they say? Because I know folks are often looking for, when they come to our kind of work, they're in some level of distress, or there's something that they're really needing to move through.
Yeah.
And I think in today's day and age, right, the idea of like sitting for years in therapy is just
Exactly.
not needed. And there are these beautiful modalities out there that help us. So what do your clients say about this kind of work? How do they feel once they're in there and moving through some of this process?
Initially, when I speak to people, they are going through all kinds of things, right? Especially in the grief space, they may be hurting, they may be going through anxiety, they may be feeling stuck, they may be going through anger, guilt, all kinds of things. And there is a space in the grief world for you to actually be seen, be heard first. So talk therapy, or even what I do with grief education, I'm also a grief educator, is holding that space. So initially my intention is to see where you are at. But the power of RTT is when you are ready to really delve. Now, with especially with grief, there is no fixing,
Mhm.
right? There's nothing to fix, because if you've had a loss, you've had a loss. Your loved one isn't going to come back. It's about navigating through that process. What they will experience with RTT is very empowering, because yes, you are still talking, but you're actually talking within your inner mind, your subconscious mind, and you are getting to release stuff straight away that you've been holding on to. Unexpressed hurt, anger, trauma often comes up, right? And allowing yourself to actually embrace maybe what you're hesitant to embrace or you're not sure how to in this space, not just grief, even for other issues. So, what clients tend to find with RTT, the first session usually is very, very eye opening. A lot of people find, see, consciously we're aware of stuff that we know what we've gone through. We'll have ideas of why we may be a certain way or why we have certain issues. If we've had trauma that we're aware of, right, we'll know somewhere. But with RTT, sometimes they make connections that are not obvious, and they have these kind of, you can almost see that aha moment in them. And what they then take away is, I had the power to come up with this stuff, but I also have the power to reverse it and flip it and go forward to how I want to be. So it is very empowering. And the first session, usually people feel very, very surprised, even sometimes, by how much they have the answers within, but also how they have connected those dots. And they definitely feel lighter, because immediately with things like talk therapy and other counseling, you're talking about your feelings, but you're kind of just talking, which I said, even in the grief space, there is a space for that. But at some point, you want to see, now what? What can I do with this feeling? And that's that breakthrough. So it is truly, on my part, I feel really blessed to see that happen. That's why I trained in RTT, because it happened with me.
Right. I was going to say that, or ask you that. Why did you choose grief as opposed to, anything else?
I get asked this quite often, and I always say, I didn't choose it, it chose me, right? When I began working with, when I first came across RTT as a client myself, I was 10 years down the road after the loss of my own dad. And I had done a lot of self work. I had done a lot of other things on myself. So I thought I was actually okay. But somewhere inside, there were little things that I would hold myself back. I wasn't very confident in speaking up sometimes. There was aspects of guilt I still held within. So when I came across RTT, and I came across it through another learning space, and I did a course of Marissa Peer's, I made connections from my own life, but to do with the loss of my dad, because I had held a lot of guilt in myself around things, the should haves, the could haves. I could have done this. And I was blown away by the fact that, how much I was holding on to, right? And I felt it's taken me 10 years without realizing it, right? We can't rush the process, because we're going to do our own healing, or whatever you want to call that word. Some people don't like healing. I call it healing. You want to go through your healing, your life's journey. You can't rush it. It's at your own pace. But sometimes we struggle unnecessarily. And so that is what made me choose to train in RTT. Now, when I went into RTT, I was very open, because it's very versatile. And in fact, even to date, even though I specialize in grief, I get a mixture of clients. Like, I have clients who come to me for anxiety, depression, even physical issues. I've done a few fertility sessions. I've had lots. There's a lot that can be done. So as we start out, as we want to help everybody, right? But what started happening with me was, I was having client sessions, but in the sessions, unexpressed grief was coming up, even though they were showing up for, like, say, for example, confidence, or even if someone was wanting to stop smoking, there was something that had a loss they'd had. And I kept on kind of, it was a pattern in my clients that were showing up, and I could really resonate. And I thought, you know what? This is something that I've lived, and I can get it. And then that's what made me decide, okay, I don't think this, I know when I lost my dad, there is help, but it's not openly still spoken about. You do have grief counseling, but the kind of things you hear, maybe now it's a bit better, but back then, my dad passed away in 2008, there wasn't much. And I was like, maybe this is my calling. And so that's how I found that grief actually chose me. Um, it was the client sessions actually that led me to, I keep on getting this pattern and I keep on going back to allowing them to express their unspoken words within that state of hypnosis, because RTT is based on hypnotherapy. And you're like a 60-plus-year-old woman, and suddenly you're going to being 3-year-old as a child who's lost their grandmom, who hadn't been able to express they lost their grandmom. And that was really a turning point for me. So that is how the grief, I guess, world welcomed me in a service way. Otherwise, I mean, I was grieving myself, right? I still have grief for my dad.
Thank you for sharing that, Jas. I'm curious about your thoughts. One of the places where I think folks can sometimes get stuck is in some model or framework that they think they can navigate, right? So, like, probably a lot of us are familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. And so I feel that, like, when a lot of folks come to see me, there's this preset, there's a mindset of how they have to grieve. And that almost my work at the beginning is sort of breaking them away from that and sort of saying, like, hey, this can look a million different ways. And really, it's about the way you're navigating it. So your experience there, the 5 stages of grief, your sort of thoughts on some of that.
I'm really glad you've asked that, because any framework, be it this, with grief, is something so unique to us. I almost say it's like your fingerprint, because even within the same family, let's say you've had a loss of a parent, like in my case, me and my sibling, we're going to grieve differently because we've had different relationships, right? Our perception, our loss is different because it's unique to the relationship we are letting go of. So the models are, and the frameworks we have out there, so the stages that you mentioned are quite well known, because a lot of people, and they are very appropriate when you look at each of the stages, because at some point a lot of people will resonate with any kind of loss, not just a loved one. So I always mention the stages in a sense. It's even in I have a grief information PDF for people, just to kind of, where am I supposed to be? So they know what those are like, but there is no chronological order to that, right? So in my case, I went through all the stages, but it doesn't mean that, oh, now I'm done with this. So we start off with the denial, it hasn't happened. You can go into the stage of our anger, feeling angry. I went through that, right? Where I was just angry with myself, angry with my dad, angry with God, right? There's a phase in that which they say bargaining. You literally saying, oh God, please, somehow wishing I'll do this, just make this go away, because that's how it hurts in that raw stage, right? And then we go into a state of depression. The grief, and this is something I like to bring up, especially depression, which is diagnosed as in a clinical manner, to the depression stage we mentioned in grief, it's not the same. It's different. You are aware that I'm feeling this immense sadness because of my loss. And you are aware, you are still doing stuff, but you are in that state. Whereas with the other depression, you just have this sense of sadness and you just don't know, and it feels, and you don't even know if you need help. Whereas with this, it's a different type. So it's called the depression, but I always point that out, that it's different. And then obviously at some point, there's a suggestion of acceptance, right? And the acceptance, people may look at it like, oh, it's not acceptance of the loss or the death. It's that acceptance of, this has happened, they're not part of our lives, but we are still here. So at some point, I do explain to clients, we can go through all these stages in a day, or in time or come back and forth. There is literally no set right or wrong. It can literally be back and forth. You like, for example, this year, last year, I turned 47. I don't mind sharing my age. And my dad had passed away when he was 57. And for some reason, that year when my birthday hit, and also I've also had the loss of my girl's father, yeah, my ex-husband, and he passed away 4 years ago. Today, in fact, is his death anniversary, and he passed away at the age of 47. So when I hit the year 47, I felt all like these stages, even after also my dad has been gone since 2008, and we're talking last year, 2024. And it hit me in a different way, the grief side, because I almost felt like the sadness come back, the almost like I can't believe numbness come back. So it was really strange. Even after all these years, you can still feel it. So with the stages, there are kind of a guideline, I would say, to sort of see where am I, but it's important not to judge yourself into I'm here and I should be there, or I'm doing it wrong. It's just important to see that you're beginning to move forward with that grief and not just stuck in it. That's where I think you want to be careful, where you feel like, okay, I think I need help. But I just want to take it one more step further with grief education. David Kessler, who is the person who has given us the grief educator certification, he talks about a sixth stage, and it is called finding meaning. So it's again not finding meaning in why the death or the loss happened. It's about finding meaning in your life, how you move forward with meaning out of I'm still here. How do I move forward? But I still want to take on that love, that legacy with me. I still want to keep the love, but I don't want to kind of just live life without meaning. And that is a big part of the work I do. It's about, I say my line that I share is grieve fully, live fully. It's all about it goes side by side. So yeah, I'm glad you should touch on the frameworks and the models we have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Carlos and Jas, because I'm learning so much from the two of you. So I do have friends who have lost their parents. I'm at that age where parents are getting older. And what's interesting to me is that a lot of those friends sort of went through these stages. I've watched them go through these stages of grief, but didn't necessarily go to anyone to talk about it or work through those stages or emotions. And over time, it seems like everyone seems to get back to, doing whatever they were doing before the loved one's death. Life moves on, right? Life goes on. So I guess my question would be, why is it important, if time heals grief, right? Why is it important to go through these type of strategies, or therapist, or in this case, your strategy of RTT?
So a couple of points there. Firstly, like I said, with these stages, it's not like I'm in this stage now and I'm in this stage now. So that's one thing. So time heals, but only when, what are you doing in that time? Time can still pass, but if you are still stuck in a certain frame of mind with your loss, right? So they talk about complicated grief and all of that sort of stuff where there's a lot of things involved. You do want to, and I don't like using the word move on in this stage. I like to say move forward. I'm very because RTT and in general, I'm a words person, and words carry power. So when we say, just move, like we move on, it almost makes it a little bit, it makes your feelings feel a little less when you say, like, if you move on from something, it's like, you've had an illness, like move on from it. But it's about moving forward, right? That's a really key distinction, because you are going ahead, but you're not moving on in the sense, there's a sense of, oh, it just happened, let's forget it. It's a whole, if it's a death of a loved one, it's a person, and they were a part of your life. They were huge in your life, right? So there's that aspect. Now with time, again, we all grief differently, because we grieve differently. But there is sort of a kind of ballpark timeline. So initially, when you just go through a loss, that is acute grief. We say when you've just had it, it was really raw. 2 to 3 years essentially is counted as about early grief, believe it or not. 2 to 3 years. For some reason, a lot of people that you talk about, they think it's a couple of months, right? And so they have this idea that actually, no, it takes a couple of years for you to kind of just say, okay, this is now life without them here physically, and I move forward in this way. And then with, I guess, looking at time itself, then you have early grief, and then you have like the mature grief, where you kind of start to look back. Time is going to heal. In some ways, you don't have a choice. Life goes on, right? Is, I guess, what you were trying to say, that we do have to get up and do life again. So people appear, a lot of people appear, this is what I've seen in my experience, they're getting on with life, they are, but somewhere inside, they're still holding on to stuff they've not expressed, they've not shared. Even after the passing of a loved one, in that stage where we've got lots of people around us, we're mourning, right? Actually, we've not processed what happened, how we felt it. And somewhere, even in our body, we're storing this stuff. So even if it looks to someone on the outside that, my love, they feel, it looks like they're getting on, you won't be surprised by, oh, suddenly they've got aches and pains in their body, or their digestion is affected, or they are not making decisions, or they're just not telling you of the stuff that they're going through. So they may, a simple practical example is like a family function, right? If you've had a loss and it's been a few years and you've got family coming together, and you've had that loss, when you go to that function, naturally you're going to see your missing person. You're going to miss them. But on the outset, you look like you're doing life. So there's always with grief, if there's one thing I want people to know, is that anyone who has had a loss just wants their grief to be seen, to be validated, to be heard. And actually, our society feels that if I talk about this one's loved one, they're going to get sad again. Oh, let me talk about it. Let's avoid it, right? I don't want to make them sad. But the best thing for someone who's had a loss is that someone remembers and actually says, oh, I want to share this story with you, or how are you doing? Or, today is so-and-so day. It's that, oh, someone remembers me, because inside I am remembering, I am grieving. Grief doesn't go away. I call it my lifelong friend.
Yeah, I think there's a really beautiful quote out there about sort of grief being love unexpressed, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I think about this idea of getting over it, to me it feels like it comes from two places. One, this cultural expectation that we always need to be okay.
Yeah.
And the other place, naturally, I think we have a general discomfort with, I don't even like to put the label negative on them, but like the negative emotions, the shame, the loss. And so there's this general expectation of get over it.
Yeah.
And, I'll just kind of share here. So I lost my father last year after,
Sorry for that.
yeah, thank you. After a 2-year sort of battle with dementia. And it was interesting because it was a very different kind of grief. Like here I was losing my father while he was still like here in the flesh,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so one of the things that sort of told myself that I needed to do was like grieve in these stages. I didn't want to find myself after his death holding on to or repressing or pushing away any of the pain.
Mm.
So really just kind of allowing myself to deal with the pain as it arose, to experience and express the pain as it arose. And it was really interesting to see that by giving myself that space and not pushing any of it away, I actually started to also feel like these deep moments of gratitude,
Yeah.
like these deep moments of love and appreciation for the relationship that we did have, for the, just again, getting to see it. I wasn't here in this like battle with grief. I
Mm-hmm.
was experiencing the grief and then also allowing space for these other beautiful things to make their existence as well. I'm curious if you can speak to some of that. Do some of your clients also experience that?
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry. And dementia is one of those things, like it's a whole nother level of grief, right? Because you've got your person, but you're still grieving who they were, and slowly, in front of your eyes. So my condolences, and I'm thank you for sharing. Yeah. With So it's interesting, right? When we look at how we are navigating grief, to make space, to make time, what we're actually doing is allowing the emotions. So, like, I'm so glad you said I don't like labeling them negative, because they aren't. An emotion is just an emotion. It's just your feelings trying, that's the language of your feelings. It's trying to tell you, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm jealous, right? I'm feeling shame. But we have this, oh, these are bad, these are good, right? But actually, you're so right. All your emotions want is to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, and to be acknowledged. The analogy that I often use with clients is, they're like, when you have a classroom of eager children and they want to be heard. So what do? They put their hand up and they're like, pick me, pick me. And if we don't hear them, they start getting off of their seat and they go, pick me, pick me. That is like the emotion that's trying to say, hey, I'm here, I'm here. And all sometimes is needed is the emotion to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. And that's it. And that's how the emotion goes, oh, she sees me. And it moves through the emotional scale, and you let go of a little bit of that. Creating, I love what you said, Carlos, about creating that dedicated time, right? So what you did essentially in what you've described was, you were aware that I'm going to come up with this. And this is something that I share as a tool with my clients, and Marissa shares it. It's called the Triple A. It's a very simple tool, but it's so foundational that just A is triple A. So the awareness that I'm feeling this emotion, and then accepting without judgment. Because we tend to judge our emotions because of maybe the idea of, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Or why am I feeling like this? We judge the emotion. Why am I still angry? Right. And then we try to suppress it. Right. And like the analogy of, they're only going to get harder. And if they don't come out verbally, like I said, they're going to show up. Your issues are in your tissues. So they're going to show up some way or the other. Right. And then the last day is the articulate bit, where you acknowledge it and you articulate it to yourself. I feel shame. And then we kind of work through a next step, like, where is this coming from? And then I have it. But the starting point is that awareness. And that's what we need. But we judge our emotions, ourselves, and so do other people. Like, I had family member lose their husband, and one of their own siblings were saying, like, why haven't you moved on yet? Why are you still crying? And that is awful. And again, the other person doesn't know. So there's no blame here because they don't see it that way. But the person going through it, they're almost made to feel like, really, should I be not, am I doing this wrong? Am I doing this right? That's the other thing. You're going through this process, you're going through something brutal, right? And then you're judging yourself for it and being judged by others and trying to look normal. And yet there's a piece of you that's gone forever, right? With loss of a relationship, because that's huge as well. When you go through a divorce or a breakup, heartbreak, there is a huge loss of that because you have built a life with somebody. And now even your identity is like, who am I? Right? What was that? Right? So it's that, I always say, dedicated time and allowing yourself to be non-judgmental in grief and in viewing your emotions. That's what's key. And that's what I do with the clients, whether it's through the RTT side or even just with my grief support. Like, there's no judgment in this space. Doesn't matter what you're feeling, just where's it come from? It's trying to tell you something. And the minute you do that, then you can move on to the next emotion. Say, okay, I get where you come from. And it's like peeling off that onion of the layers of emotions. And it's going to keep coming up. It's just, that's how we are.
I love how you both shared the non-judgmental aspect of, I guess, flowing through grief, right? Just observing whatever's coming up. And for me, like when I was, and grief can happen, as you said, Jas, with anything. It can
Yeah.
be, when your house is burned down. Grief can be when you're going through a divorce, and when you lose a loved one. It can be all. I believe you go through stages of grief in all those areas of life, but I'm curious, since you went through a divorce and death of loved ones, was it different for you, those stages? Was the intensity any more or less, in comparison?
Yeah. So with grief, I think you can't compare. You cannot compare grief. When you say whose loss is worse, it's always your loss, right? Whether you've had a divorce and I've had a loss of a loved one or both, your loss is your loss. It's going to feel as bad as, or as whatever it is for you, as my loss is. There's no comparison. Because when you are going through it, that is your grief, that is your experience, right? People sometimes have this idea of, I'll give you an example with age, right? If you have had somebody who is, let's look at a very elderly situation, like a grandparent pass away, for example, who is, say, my granddad was about 104 when he passed away, so he lived a long life. And they say, oh, but he's lived a long life, we should be all of that. Yes, we know, right? He's lived a long life. It's been amazing. But at the same time, we knew him for like the entirety of our lifetime, right?
Right.
So you can't compare. On the other hand, if someone's had a miscarriage, right? A lot of people who have had miscarriages don't feel seen because it's like, oh, try again, right? But in that space, in that intensity, when you learned that you were pregnant, you became a mom and a dad, right? You were expecting. And that loss is still going to hurt. It's still valid. Just because the child didn't, make it, or it doesn't make your grief any less. Similarly, if you've had a divorce, it doesn't mean it's that is the meaning, or the, like you said, it's unexpressed love, is that the depth of what we felt with whatever relationship or love. So in my case, it was hard. My marriage, when I left my marriage, it had been 10 plus years. And my dad obviously is my dad. He was my rock. So I couldn't say, I was just navigating the whole space together to my best ability. But for me, what kept me going was, in that time, I had two young girls, right? They were 3 and 5, and they were my biggest strength, and they are my biggest strength and my biggest weakness, right? Both ways. So I just knew I had to just get up and go, get up and go. But not to say that I didn't struggle behind the scenes, right? At that time, it's I you can't even explain it. You can't even articulate it. It's like that. It's and that is why when you do any kind of grief support, it's not just mental. It is holistic, right? It's emotional, it's physical, because you even sometimes you hold on to these things in your body as well. So this is where I sort of do grief movement flows as well, where we release the pain with movement, breath, and sound as well. Right? There's some things that words can't describe, but we still hold on to them in our body. And grief is that space. And all trauma has an aspect of grief, but all grief doesn't necessarily have trauma in it. Right? Everyone is different. So yeah, that's what I would say about that, because we can't really compare. That's what I feel.
Thank you for that, Jas. I think two final things that are coming up for me. One is I think what you shared there too is that sometimes it's not the loss that that we had, but also like the loss, I think, for a lot of people of what could have been.
Yeah.
Right? Like the marriage that fell apart. Right? Like, oh, I had created this story in my life about what my life was going to look like. I have to let go of that too. Right. Yeah. And then the other thing that's just coming up for me is to say thank you for the work that you're doing, because, just that to hear somebody that's out there giving people permission to feel and to navigate this with non-judgment and with such love. Like I can tell that, right? Like there's just this love that you bring to that work, and that you get to bring your own stories, right? I think a lot of times the best way we can help people navigate things is like through our own stories and our own experiences. So it's such an honor to be interviewing today and to be hearing about the beautiful work that you're doing. So I just wanted to share that with you myself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I also want to just add one more thing about the grief space, or even just generally anything that we go through, any issues we have. It's not just, so the people who come to me, the clients who I get, they have had a loss, right? And I said, I can start, there's nothing to fix. But your grief and your loss almost becomes an invitation for you to address other things that it brings up. So in the grief space where you've had a loss, like I said with myself, I had guilt come up. So your grief is going to bring up your own old wounds that are unhealed. And it's almost an invitation for you to look at those, right? Because everything that you felt gets magnified once you've had that loss, right? So your old wounds, guilt, shame, blame is a big part of this. Somehow we hold, and in any kind of loss, even though we may not have been at fault directly, there is always some part in us that we feel like there's a should, could, would kind of question that lingers on in us sometimes. Or I didn't get to say this, or I shouldn't have done that. In my case, it was, when we grew up, we didn't have the knowledge that we have today of helping people like my dad. My dad had an alcohol addiction, but so did a lot of the people around him. We just weren't aware. It was normalized, right? Everybody was drinking. But we, as a family, out of our worry, we used to argue with him a lot to stop. And now when I look back, I understand it, but I held on the guilt of that. So the grief side, allowed me to address those things in myself. So with the work that I do, often we start off with this space of I am feeling stuck, I'm feeling anxious, I'm not feeling motivated, right? They've had a loss, that's obvious, but this is how it's showing up. I've got physical aches and pains. My mind is foggy. There is an element of that. We have the grief brain, or we have fog because your mind can't cope. So it's trying to minimize what you're taking in, as you know, Carlos. So you have all of that, but that's your grief is not showing up as grief itself per se. It's showing up in other ways. And it's almost an invitation to, dare I say, allow yourself, like you said, in the way you describe, it's almost a beautiful place if you can go there with an open mind to be a better version of yourself, but then be a better version of yourself still with the depth of the love. So it just gives you that meaning. So it doesn't mean I can't be sad now that, my dad's passed away 17 years now. I can still be sad, but then I have a deeper connection with him. And not just because I do this work, but even in the way I talk about him, the way we include him in our daily life, that is it. So yeah, I do love what I do actually. It's a very humbling place as well sometimes, because you see how much people, they've already had a loss and they're struggling and they're in pain, and then they're holding on to so much on themselves about it. So to be able to just make that weight lighter is very, very fulfilling. But it's also, again, come back with RTT, it's empowering, because you then realize, actually, even with the worst thing that could have ever happened in my life, let's say you've lost your loved one, if you can find a nugget of, a treasure within yourself from that, how amazing is that? And that's what I gently try to aim for in my work. But we have to start with compassion, patience, and acceptance of where you are. You can't rush it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jas. So beautiful just listening to you both talk about all of this. Um, so in yoga, there's this concept of dukkha. It's, I guess you can translate it to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was the reason I asked you if the intensity of grief is different when it comes to the end of a marriage versus the death of a loved one is because when I went through a divorce, it felt like something was dying.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was.
Mm.
And, and that's how I got into meditation and yoga. And now I know it was death to that identity that I had created,
Mm.
right, about myself. And what's beautiful about stepping into these type of practices for me is that it really does awaken us to our conditioning. And
Mm.
that's what happened to me. You're just on this autopilot and you go through these emotions not even knowing they're present. You don't even know how they're showing up most of the time in situations in your body, in the way you talk, the way you speak to someone, how you handle confrontations, everything.
Mm.
It shows up in
Mm.
everything.
Mm.
um, and it helped me become aware of those emotions, how they show up in my body, and then be able to pause and recognize. um, and that's been amazing. I haven't experienced the death of a loved one. That season hasn't arrived yet. But I can say that just awakening to those conditioned patterns have helped me to make my life a little bit better, in the sense I'm not struggling like I used to,
Mm.
before that experience.
Mhm.
Now, every day is just sort of like as it comes, I just flow through it. Yes, I experience all these emotions. I get mad, I get sad, but I also laugh and I'm playful. So to look at all of it with the holistic lens, I think
Mm.
stepping into these practices helped me. So yeah, thank you both for doing this amazing work. I'm glad there are more people speaking about this, and
Mhm.
especially from South Asian community,
Mhm.
because mental health is not something everyone talks about. Everyone accepts all these things that happen as just part of life, and this is something you shared, Jas, that when someone gets through something in 6 months, they are looked upon as a stronger person, as opposed to someone who may take 2 years to get through
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
uh, you know uh, grief, which was my case. And everyone was just telling me to, oh, just move on, it's over,
Mm.
just get up, go date, or just a lot of expectations are put
Yeah.
on us, right? To
Yeah.
just pick up and um,
No,
move
it's so
on as
true.
opposed to move forward.
Yeah. There is a concept that I learned in my grief education of practical grievers. And this was really interesting to me. And I now share it with some people. There are people who have had loss, but their way of navigating it is by doing stuff, getting stuff done. They're not necessarily showing that what we expect typically of like grief, right? So if they've had a loved one who's passed away, they're the ones who are getting stuff done, they're the ones who are organizing things or looking after things, but they're still grieving inside. And they are also sometimes judged because some people may look at them and say, oh, she's not bothered, she's not crying, or they're not upset. Or we have this judgment on the other end as well
Very
of
true.
something, but we don't know. This is one thing that I think is key, is either way, we don't know what someone is really going on or going through inside, whether that they're upset and they're actually showing their emotion, which we advocate, like speak freely, talk freely, don't be judged. But the other side, that may not be their way of, it's like when we talk about love language, right? Same way, like people have different ways of expressing love. People have different ways of navigating grief as well. And sometimes the practical grievers are not only judged by everyone else, but they think something is. I have clients sometimes who come to me and they say, I haven't really had a big cry, or which is fine. If they need it, it'll come. But it's not like I'm going to sit there and force you to somehow cry when you are dealing with that. Your emotions are being heard in another way. And they may think is something wrong with me, right? You can tell if they do need it, then maybe they're trying to be forcefully strong, then they need that space. But there's somebody who's actually, I have a few friends who are like that, who've had loss, have dealt with it, and maybe a lot of people who are also on a more spiritual path. Like you mentioned, you got into meditation like after, but if you're already on that path and then you go through like a loss, as opposed to where you're just starting out, you don't have those avenues of sitting still, giving yourself those dedicated time, then you may grieve a little bit differently. So you become what we call the practical griever, right? You're still grieving, and there's nothing wrong in that as well. So if anyone watching and listening to this is judging themselves, just step back and think, like, is your emotion being held, being seen? If it is, then great. If it isn't, then that's where you look at, okay, I'm forcefully trying to be strong. Whereas actually, I am grieving, but my way of doing this is letting my emotion be seen, or by doing stuff for my loved ones and holding space for them. So it's really interesting. Yeah. I just thought I wanted to share that because you spoke about meditation and all these things coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to come to you, Jas, what is the structure like, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So grief or not, either way, even if you are coming for grief. So I specialize in grief. So let's talk about that. So if you've had a loss, people who often come to me are maybe they've just had a loss. So they've just had, and they can't, like, it's really hard. They're just maybe not able to handle their emotions and stuff. So I will first speak to you. We'll have a consultation and I'll see where you're at. I have to meet you where you are at. And if you are in a space where you just need to be supported and you need a space to talk through some of the things and also maybe do some of the movement, breath, and sound to flow the emotions, that is a space where we may start. If you are in a place where you have had a chance, or you are, I can tell where if someone, when they're ready for the RTT side, because with RTT you're going deeper now, you're really going to go deeper within yourself, within your subconscious, definitely going to be seen, be heard. In RTT we do something called, it's actually dialogue with the hurter, where if someone's hurt you, you get to speak and you get to release. But with grief, we do what I like to say, dialogue with the loved one. And you get a chance in that state of art. This is where then I would suggest the RTT. If it's coming up in, I'm feeling guilty, I should have been home, why wasn't I home? Like I had a client who said they found a new job, they were working, they were at work, their dad was not well, and they still went into work, and their dad ended up being unwell, still didn't call the ambulance, and then towards the later, and by the time they did, they passed away. So X amount of time had passed. The client is feeling they're still getting to work, coming to terms with it, but the guilt they're carrying is massive. So in that stage, and I'm just by talking to them how they're kind of able to express themselves, articulate themselves, I kind of can know, okay, let's go now into the RTT stage. And that's where I offer RTT cycles. An RTT session in my world is about, I don't like to rush it, it's about 2.5, 3 hours long. So in the first half hour, we go through a bit more in detail where you're at, what you're after, what would you like to really address for this session and this cycle that we're going to have. Then we go into the session itself, where in RTT, we take you first into hypnosis. Hypnosis is not what we see on TV. It's not entertainment. It is a stage where you are completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. We are in dialogue, but in that stage, you are now in touch with what we are saying, your subconscious mind. I like to take it a little step further and bring in the idea of the universal mind, the collective mind, right? So if you have had that guilt come up, we will do a technique called dialogue with the loved one, where you will invite your loved one. They'll be sat opposite you, and you get to tell them first how you're feeling. Tell them what you've been through. Tell them when you're missing them. Say sorry, anything that's on your mind, and then release whatever guilt you have. And then we do some other techniques to really bring you back to balance, and we're regulating you in a way, but through the hypnotherapy. And at the end of the session, we create a personalized RTT hypnosis audio, which is kind of rewiring the mind by repetition. You're going to listen to it every day. And then at the end of the session, we give you the recording. You will listen to that for 3 to 4 weeks daily. But during that time, in the way I work with you, I check in with you. Every week we do a text check-in, or every 2 weeks we'll have a half-hour Zoom call. How are you? How are you getting on? And this is where then I introduce the other tools I mentioned. So I bring in the breath work, I bring in the mindset tools, the AAA, those type of emotional awareness. So it's like looking at the RTT is going within to look at where things are coming from, letting go of stuff from the past, addressing the trauma, and then the recording and the support tools and techniques are like, where do I want to be? And that is all a cycle that I work with. So that is kind of how I work with you one-to-one. I really need to see where you are at, what you are ready to go in. So it's not about fitting you into my box. It's about really, okay, I have a structured framework, kind of like what we spoke about earlier, but where do you fit in? What are you, what is going to serve you best? And that's how I work, blend what I've learned with grief education, grief movement, and the RTT as well. So after about working with me for 4 to 5 months maximum, my intention and our joint intention is that you are more equipped in life to have amazing awareness emotionally and navigate those ups and downs, because life is still going to happen, right? And I'm not going to be able to take your pain away. You're still going to hurt, you're still going to grieve, but you have the tools and you have the awareness, and that's where the change comes. So that's how I work with people.
Guys, it's really a beautiful to hear the way in which you can sort of meet the client where they are, right? That idea. I think a lot of these modalities and treatments often don't leave a lot of room for that. And it's almost like we're going to try to fit you into the model. And what I hear you saying is like, there's so much uniqueness and complexity to where you are and how you're dealing with your grief that I'm going to just take some time to assess and meet you there and see what you need. And to have that flexibility as a practitioner, that's really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also training to be clinical, and I think by next month I will be a clinically trained. So I'll be a clinical RTT practitioner. But it's about working together with you, because I know what I need to do, but I need to see where you're at and what you're ready for as well. And it's that blend that allows for therapy or any kind of work that we all do, that shouldn't be more pressure on you, right? That should actually help you. It shouldn't be an added pressure on you in your everyday life. So it should be your safe space. And like I said, with grief, the biggest thing is a space where you're seen and you're heard without judgment, right? So that, I think, is very key to what I do and how I do it with my clients. Yeah.
Thank you, Jas. Thank you for sharing. For those who may want to get in touch with you, what would be the quickest way for them to reach you?
Yeah, they can just go on my website, jasbamra.com. I'm on Instagram, Jas_Bamra, and on Facebook, I'm Jas Bamra Hypnotherapy. So there's many ways, but my website will lead you to all these places. And if you're in a space where you are ready to get help or you want to just explore, then I do offer like a 30-minute consultation for complimentary, just to see if this is something that aligns with you and if you're ready for it. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to share, Carlos? Anything more?
No, again, I'm just so moved by the work that Jas is doing. To know that I have allies in the field that are right, not telling people that they need to move on and get past it, and to create that space, because I think that that's ultimately what it's about. Jas, I felt so validated today, because I also believe, right, when we can be loved in our pain, where we can be in a place to be ready to let go of it and to integrate it, right? That the grief may be there 20 and 30 years. Like I always say, like, I hope that I still get emotions when I think about my dad next year and 20 years from now. So, I just felt like what beautiful work you're doing. And so I just wanted to reiterate how absolutely amazing it was to sit and chat with you this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you both so much. I was really, I think this is my life's mission. And so for me to be able to share and also educate, right? A lot of us, I was like that, completely grief illiterate, like not aware, not knowing what to say. So if anyone watching this is able to take away something from it, then that's amazing, right? That's so important. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jas, for being here with us. You're the first to introduce me to RTT, so a special thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And I hope our paths cross in person one of these days in the future.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to meet you in person.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.